Hey everybody, Ora here. Hope you're all well. Apologies that there haven't been many videos that have gone out this week. I've unfortunately been under the weather, which has caused a backlog of everything. So I'll try and get a couple of videos out over the next few days, get everything caught back up to where it belongs. But if you hear me coughing or anything like that through these videos, I do apologise. I'm still on the back end of not being well. So let's get into this main video. We're going to be discussing New World, having a bit of a review. It's been out now for a week, and we're just going to kind of go over it with initial feelings, brief overview of some of the key features that I've found so far going through it. And if this is something that you want to see more of, I can start doing tutorials and guides as I found things going through the game. So, New World is the new MMO that has come out from Amazon Games. There's been a lot of hype around it, so I won't bore you too much with kind of like the backstory and stuff like that, and I'm going to talk about it more from a pure gameplay and kind of how it feels perspective more than anything else, as someone that is currently obviously playing World of Warcraft and the problems that includes at the moment for everyone. So we'll swap to the main screen and kind of give you a show of what the screen looks like, and for one-time use only, I guess, we will actually swap the screen up here and just hide a couple of the quests. So as you can see, the UI is pretty bare bones. A lot of the information that you need on site is pushed out to the edges of your screen, which is good. You have your quest log and kind of spell utility and everything to the right hand side of your screen, which at first takes a little bit of getting used to, as you have to track certain abilities, but the UI is large enough that doesn't really become a problem. And one of the glaring things that you will see is there actually aren't that many spells and abilities. So coming from World of Warcraft, where you have 36, 42 potential spell keybinds, depending on your class and spec and how much you want to min-max things with max overs or any other ability, you actually have 6, from 1 to 6 numbered, and then you have Q, R, and F as your main attacking keybinds. And we'll go on to the QRF keys and what they do shortly when we go into the quick view of the gear. So, not too heavy, and a lot of the gameplay is focused around, you know, mouse clicking or holding it down for a heavy attack, single click for light attack, and holding the right mouse button is your block. So, kind of very Dark Souls-esque in terms of its main combat profile, rather than the likes of other MMOs that we have, where you have a plethora of keybinds and you are trying to maximize those keybinds to the utmost benefit. Now, talking about the spells and abilities, we will go into the build profile first on how your character works. So when you create a character, you choose their look and everything else. In my case, I went for the bearded look. But that's about it. Everyone's human. There's no fantasy races or anything like that. This is set in a relatively realistic world, outside of a few exceptions in terms of magic, like the fact that you can be revived, no one ever really dies, and there are a few objects in the game that have innate magic attached to them, and we'll get onto that in the weapons. But for the attributes and how you build your character, we're looking very much at almost like a D&D system. You buy points, so every time you level, you get points allocated to you. Will respec for the purposes of this. So you can see that at my level, I am 22 currently. I have about 20 hours actual playtime and about 32 hours-ish logged on Steam. And we'll get into why there's such a big difference there later on, as we talk about the drawbacks of the game so far. But at level 22, because of my gear and the various stats on it, you can see that I have a lot of strength baseline anyway, not a lot of dexterity, baseline dex int, and I have a couple of bonuses to my focus through equipment and item buffs, as you can see here in blue and purple. Constitution, I'm quite fortunate, and I have quite a lot from my items, so I have quite high there. Now, the UI is fairly straightforward in that it will tell you what each attribute helps with. So strength helps with the damage for sword and shield, great axe, warhammer, hatchet and spear, but the likes of spear, sword and shield and hatchet actually scale with both strength and dexterity, but they scale more from strength than they do dexterity, because as you can although you see here that spear scales with dexterity and strength, so therefore scales more with dexterity than it does with strength. So the order in which they show up in terms of scaling with X and Y, X will be the greatest stat to put your points into. Now, I am using a warhammer and great axe simultaneously, so I'm running around with two two-handers. Unfortunately, not like the warrior in Titan's Grip style. I actually have to alternate between the two weapons, so strength is my dump stat, which, as you can see there, I've just deposited all the points in, straightforward act, and then just committed them. And each of these nodules at 50, 100, 150, 200, 250, and 300 respectively, they all grant a certain bonus. So for strength, you have 5% damage to melee weapon light attacks and a plus 10% mining speed. We'll get onto the professions once we've covered weapons as well, so don't worry about that. And then at 100, I get plus 20 encumbrance and plus a further 5% damage to melee rather 10% damage to heavy attacks rather than light attacks. So you've got light attacks buffed here, heavy attacks buffed here, and then the third one I will take less stamina damage from attacks when I'm blocking, and it will also then decrease the total weight of mined items. And the way you don your points here will again feed into the trade skills when we get there. So intelligence is kind of the caster stat, with the fire staff and the ice gauntlet both being the magic DPS type weapons within this game. Focus is if you want to be a healer, because the life staff focuses purely off scales purely off focus. Constitution is just flat health, like most D&D-esque games, and any points-based game where you specifically have to put points into health. So, the weapons. Let's go into it. So, as you can see here, it's broken down. The one thing with New World is the UI is really, really simple and easy to read. We will swap back to screen and just move the camera around as we require here. So, yeah, as you can see, you've got one-handed weapons, two-handed weapons, ranged weapons, and magic items. Now, obviously, the game has only just been released. They may add more weapons down the line. We don't know, or this may be the bulk of it and all we're going to get going forward. But you start off with sword and shield when you go through the tutorial. And we'll respec. And you can see here that you have Swordmaster or Defender. Now, what does that mean? Well, each weapon has two branches that you can go down in terms of how it plays and what you focus on. Defender, I've found out that a lot of weapons seem to have kind of an offensive playstyle that you can cater towards, or a defensive/tanking playstyle. And that goes the same way for the majority of weapons, the exceptions being the ranged weapons. They don't seem to have the ability to have essentially taunt modifiers to them. So from a group perspective, you obviously have the life staff for healers, but any other weapon seems to be able to tank. I've not set foot in a group myself as of yet, so I can't tell you if there is currently a quote-unquote meta weapon build for tanking, but I can't imagine that being the case as of yet, because there are so many different ways in which you can do this. You can make your weapons how you want them to be, or you can play to your strengths, and we'll discuss that a little bit more when I talk about my weapon types. So yeah, you've got 3 points available. Now you've got this system called weapon mastery. So the more you use a weapon and the more kills you get with that weapon, so the more boars you slay or wolves or whatever you're encountering in the world, you will get plus to that skill. So let's get out of here and find a boar if we can. You see all the E's come up as I walk past them. The E is your interact button, essentially. And when we come to the professions, we'll discuss how that works and what it looks like when it comes to things like logging. So we've got a level 6 swine here. And we're just gonna... there. So it came up with +4 Great Axe Mastery. Now, obviously, the more difficult of an opponent you fight, and the longer it takes to defeat them, the more mastery you gain with that weapon. And if we go to Great Axe, I need 2,513 points of mastery to unlock the next level. Now, each weapon has a maximum of 20 levels, which means 19 talent points. Now, this is very reminiscent of the old talent trees of World of Warcraft, in that it is a very linear progression. Now, it doesn't really show much on the sort of board, but we'll try it, and if I'll probably respec my Great Axe to better show this. But as you unlock these levels and you gain a point, so I'm level 4 with Sword and Shield, I have 3 points available to me. You can pick whether you want to be DPS or offensive, or defensive rather. So we go with defensive, so we get Shield Rush. Now, during the tutorial, you get your first point, and then you'll commit. And these larger abilities are your active abilities that you can use. And these are what fill up Q, R, and F. Now, you can mix and match them, like so. So, because it will fill up in the order of Q, R, and F. So, you've got Whirling Blade, you've now got Shield Rush. You're divvying between the two. Now, I could go with maybe Shield Bash, commit, and that's my 4th point. Alternatively, you can just max out there, and you can see that each row is unlocked after you purchase a point in that representative row, with the exception of abilities that are chained. So Improved Rush and Intimidating Rush. You then have a final ability, which augments essentially your tree. And as you can see here, it has a requirement to purchase the ability. You need to have unlocked the previous row and have 10 points spent in that tree. So we're looking at, for each of these builds, we'll just commit those 3 points there and go to my Great Axe. So you can see here that I'm starting to cap out and I'm filling points up as it backtracks. We're looking at probably being in a position where, for most weapon builds, you're going to have 11, maybe 12 points in, say, Reaper in my case, which works on essentially trying to leech your health back and going from pack to pack consistently, because once things are below 30% health and essentially within execute range, I then gain healing based on the crit damage I do. So, like when I get a couple more points, I have an ability to call Execute. The next upgrade to that means that it cannot be stopped. It becomes so you can't be stunned mid-animation, essentially, and cause it to animation cancel. And then finally, Execute will always crit against foes with below 30% health, which means that once I have Executioner, that then feeds into critical gains. So every time I execute a target, I will then heal for 10% of that damage done. I also currently have it set up so that Great Axe attacks against foes below 30% health heal you for 10% of the damage done anyway. So you can see how this is building up, and then you have abilities like Reap, which will pull targets into you, and then because I have it maxed out, when I pull a target in towards me, I do a conal sweep. So the animation looks as follows. Q in and then sweep. So I get a double whammy. And all of that is converted into healing. Alternatively, if we go back, we have Mauler, which is about setting up area zone denial. So if I respec quickly, 7, commit the points, we end up with kind of area denial, DPS. If you have a tank that's able to keep everything close, then this is looking like the build you would use in a group setting. Now, obviously, as I was saying, I prefer the Reaper setup because my crowd control weapon of choice is my hammer, which has the ability to push things back, stun them, disorientate them, and also I get to make seismic earthquakes, which is quite nice. Kind of makes me feel a bit like a shaman. But you have this wide selection when it comes to weapons, which is nice, and from a PvE perspective so far, they seem relatively balanced. I think ranged weapons are favoured more in PvP, but we can go into more detail on that in maybe a PvP-centric video if you guys are interested in that as we go down the line. Going into the trade skills, though, we get this wall. Now, this looks really, really daunting at first glance, but it's really not. If you've ever played games like Final Fantasy, the professions work very similar. The jobs work very similar. If we go into something like logging, it's level 66. So I'm a level 66 logger. I have a gathering speed bonus of plus 13.8%. I need an axe. Now, the tools required, we'll get back into when we talk about, when I show the character screen in a second in terms of gear and things like that. Actually, we'll do that bit first. So, no, tab. Tab is the character key rather than C. So, some of these keyboard changes from game to game, you will need to get a little bit used to. But it's fairly straightforward. Again, kind of one of the strengths of the UI here is it is very clear-cut, straightforward, and very easy to read. So in this top section, you have your standard armor slots. You have the equip load. Now, the equip load in this game actually matters on what you do. So in my case, while wearing heavy armor, your dodge is a slow sidestep. So it is a relatively clunky, hobble to the side, as you'd expect. It's more realistic. I'm not going to be Dark Souls rolling around the place with 2 shields and a flipping Zweihander on my back. So, while wearing heavy armor, your dodge is slow. Your block stability is increased, which means I don't get pushed around as much when I am blocking. And any crowd control debuffs I apply last 20% longer, which works to my favour when I'm playing with my two-handed hammer, because I am applying crowd control effects. And you can see that it has sockets, works very similar like other games. It has a gear score, it tells you its armor rating, and it can have plus stats. So pretty straightforward, not really too much to talk about from an MMO perspective. You have your 2 weapon choices up here, and I don't have any weapons currently in my inventory because I am trying to keep my carry weight down. Because when you become encumbered, you can't run, dodge, sprint, and you also can't fast travel either. So you are stuck, moving like a snail. And it's not particularly enjoyable. For any games like Skyrim, Fallout, you know the problem when you get too heavy. and I've yet to find a way to cheese it. You know, like carrying something outside or just throwing something every few yards. I haven't quite worked it out. You then have your utilities bar, which is your 3 through to 6 on the keyboard. So you have food, basic food, which, you know, either recovers health or recovers mana, based on whether it's, if it's energizing, it's mana food, and if it doesn't have energizing in, it's just your standard health regen. One thing to note is you recover health per second for 20 seconds, and then after that period of time, you then regenerate a percentage of your total health every 2.5 seconds for 20 minutes. And that's 20 minutes real time rather than, you know, 20 minutes in game, which could be, you know, 5, 10, depends on which game you play. 4 and 5 are your health and mana potions respectively, although you can, if you really want, put multiple potions on multiple bars. You don't really need to worry too much about that, but I'd probably recommend having health and mana so you don't accidentally double spend. You then also unlock your last consumable slot at 25. So once you're at 25, you've pretty much got the majority of your toolkit. Down here is your jewelry, artifacts, and bags as well. So you start off with a carry weight of 200. There is a quest that you can get, and I am currently on it, I just haven't gone and completed it yet, which will net you a bag that adds 50 to your carry weight. I should really go do that, to be honest. Then the same at level 30, and again at 45. At 40, you unlock earrings. So again, kind of like Final Fantasy, you end up with extra jewelry slots. You have a necklace, rings, jewelry, and then earrings, which are basically just more stat sticks. They can have useful effects like refreshing evasion, reduce of active cooldowns by 0.7% after exiting the dodge animation. Haven't found it too useful, but I imagine at higher levels that percentage might be higher, so I might knock potentially a second or 2 seconds off every time I actually finish a dodge, which might help benefit a more Dark Souls-esque playstyle if I'm in, say, light armor. Because if I'm in light armor, your dodge is a quick roll that covers a lot of distance, and you deal 20% bonus damage and healing. Very good if you want to be in, out, and maybe if I'm playing like a Mauler's build, or if I'm using ranged weapons. Down here, in the F3 section, more where you can see that the hotkey is F3, which is for fishing rod, are your job tools. Now, very, very early on in the game, you can craft flint versions, because you can pick flint up from the roadside, and then using simple wood from bushes and small trees, or green wood as it's called, you can then craft these profession weapons. So you have a sickle for harvesting, you have your skinning knife, obviously, mining pick, a logging axe, and you have an Azoth staff that I'm on a quest to do, so I don't quite know what that is yet, but I'm assuming it's just another tool. I'll obviously update you guys as we get to it. And then down here you obviously have gear score with your stat panel and your resistances. So my physical damage reductions, which an elemental, which at the moment is even, but I imagine come end game there may be instances where, like in World of Warcraft, in the old days, you wanted 20 or, not 20, you wanted like 210 fire resistance or shadow resistance, depending on the raid you were doing. But we'll cross that bridge when we get to it. So now we've briefly discussed kind of weapons, and they do also have stats as well. So logging luck, while logging gain 3.7% chance to find rare items. Now, rare items themselves are things like these craft mods. So, softwood tree sap. Used in crafting to apply a bonus of focus and dexterity to an item. This means this can guarantee certain stats. That's all it does when you go into your crafting. So, on the note of crafting, we'll go into the trade skills. So we'll start with the gathering. Gathering, pretty straightforward. Fishing takes a little bit more effort in this game, and as a result I haven't yet entered it because it is much more inconvenient with mobs roaming around. Like, as you've seen through this video, you've probably noticed that there's a pig that keeps walking past me. Yeah, the game doesn't stop when you pause in any way, shape or form. So fishing areas can, and so far in my experience, I've had mobs wandering around it, so I've been attacked by wolves, zombies, things like that. So I obviously get interrupted from fishing, deal with that, and then kind of go off and do something else. So I can't talk too much about fishing, but there are designated fishing spots. And as you can see here, there are points where you can see that it becomes discoverable and trackable at 2, 3, 4. So as you rank up, you get more benefits or experience at fishing. And that is best shown in, say, like skinning and tracking and skinning. So at 25, I was able to track small prey. And to put that into context, you can see up in my little minibar, next to this number 5, there is a rabbit. And that will point me in a direction of a rabbit I can skin. Or small prey. And if we go back into it, at 50, you have medium prey. Which will show the likes of boar, actually, the only thing I've come across so far are boar. But you get the idea. At 75, I will get large prey, so your elk and your bison, as the image shows. Small predators, like wolves, will be tracked at 125, and at 175, I will be able to track bears. The cap is 200. So it's something to work through. And also the note with skinning, as you can see here is a perfect example. You are level locked. So at the moment, I don't really have a problem because I can skin animals up to and higher than my level. I'm not in a position at level 22 to beat on level 30 animals. But I'm very rapidly approaching that skinning level, which is good because it means that if I continue to maintain it, I will always be able to skin creatures at level. The fact that it says that I can skin animals that are up to level 25 means that I need to get these last 2 levels in skinning prior to me hitting level 25, because then, as mobs are the same health as me, if not a little bit higher, then I'm going to have a problem, and I'm then going to have to kind of backtrack. And logging is the same. Like, logging allows me to gather trees. Now, young trees have that green wood that we were talking about. It's very, very basic wood. Mature wood, word wood, and ironwood all have different, essentially, different types of timber or wood attached to them. And they're used for, like, greater crafting things. The fact that word wood and ironwood are trackable once we get to a higher level means that there is every possibility that this little mini-map is just going to be absolutely swamped with information. So it may come to a point where we have to be able to limit what we see on the mini-map. We're going back into the skills. So you've done your gathering section. You're leveling that up. You're getting the materials. What do you do with those materials? Well, seeing as logging is my highest, we'll go to woodworking. You can see here the different types of timber you can have. Some wordwood planks, longer. Coarse sandpaper is your refining material that you use to change something into something else. And fine sandpaper is just an advanced form of that. And you have like ironwood planks, and generally it's not too much. But if we come over here, I will show you how the profession works as a whole. So we have a mature tree here. You need to be 50 logging to be able to cut this down. You hit E and then it just becomes automatic. We don't have to worry about anything. And you will fell this tree. And it will award so many points. And this kind of starts feeding into one of the problems with the game. So you can see that I've just got 166 logging skill for that. And I need 1,037. So another nine mature trees and our level. You can see here that other people are logging as well. You can run past, pick up a bush, you end up with 1 green wood. Now that blue icon that was next to it is because I have a side quest that is asking me to pick up or to acquire 300 green wood to hand in for bounties. Because this game has quests and bounties, but the system is a little bit complicated. And one of the biggest gripes that seem to be coming out of New World and the community is the fact that with so much to do in terms of skills and how you can play and how grindy the game can be, there isn't a lot to push you towards completing the main objectives. So, woodshop. You can see here that now we acquired our wood, we end up in this situation. So we have lumber, we need sandpaper, which is the refining material. We have 42 timber, and we have 834 aged wood. Choose the amount you want. You do have to pay a tax amount to craft. And you can see there that by crafting 21, because of my experience, I got a bonus of 1, and that increased my woodworking skill by 5,586, bringing up to 73. So you have the same for these other professions. Now, these lists tell you at what skill level you unlock them. So I'm 53. What's the next unlock? Platinum ingot is the next unlock at 100. So I can make everything from sand flux up. And if we just go over to the smelter, you can see. There we go. So I can make charcoal, iron ingots, void bender ingots. No idea how to get them and why I'd want them. But you can also downgrade materials, so you can break higher materials down if you need to or want to. But once you've got the refining done and the refining out of the way, you can go into the crafting side. So you have this huge breakdown of furnishing, cooking, arcana, which is your basic alchemy for other games. So whereas World of Warcraft has alchemy, in this game it's called arcana. And it is still responsible for making your health and mana potions, but it is also responsible for potentially crafting the magic weapons of choice. So Ice Gauntlet, Life Staff, Fire Staff, and more powerful elixirs or resources to go into other things. And that's very much the same for other things. So your engineering is responsible for your gathering tools. So like an iron logging axe or pickaxe into steel, but it also is responsible for bows and muskets, and your and ammunition, repair kits, things of that nature. Armoring speaks for itself. That is your plate armor. Well, actually, it's any type of armor. So it also covers your leatherworking and stuff like that. Weapons, anything that doesn't come under engineering goes into that. Jewel crafting is quite hard to level up because you need a certain amount of silver and things like that, and I've yet to actually find out where I can mine silver. And this is where we start getting onto the problems within the game. We'll go into the map and show you how the map looks. So, first big gripe with the game is the map and how it starts. In most games, you expect that, like World of Warcraft, you pick a starting zone, or you pick a class or a race, and you start in that zone. So, you and your friend want to play a human? Great. you can either go to Elwyn Forest or you go to the Echoing Isles, if you're a new player. If you're in Final Fantasy and you pick their version of human, Highlander or otherwise, you can start in Udal. Or if you're Thick Pirate Boy, can't remember the name of the race, you end up in the Seafaring section of Final Fantasy. I do apologize. I'm trying to remember my experience of Final Fantasy XIV, and the names are just not with me at the moment. But you get the idea. If you were to pick a class or a race, you'd expect to be able to start in the same zone as your friends. Unfortunately for New World, because everyone is human, you'd immediately assume that you all start in the same zone. Unfortunately, you don't. As you can see here, in the center of this map, there are 4 zones, all level 1 to 25. You have First Light, which is the zone I started in, Monarch's Bluff, which my old character started in, 1 to 25, which I know a clan member from Destiny 2 started in, and Windsward from 1 to 25 as well, where I believe a World of Warcraft guild member started in. So, if you were to try and play as, say, a party of 3 or a party of 4, there's every possibility that you could all be in different zones. Which means that you are going to have to run to a center location for all of you. And unfortunately, these mobs aren't a case of it's not dynamic scaling, where things will grow with you by any stretch of the imagination. You start off, and we'll use New World as an example, you start off here, the First Light Watchtower in Rose Landing, and you do this area around here. So as you can see, recommended level 2, recommended level 5, and you kind of just work your way around this zone. And eventually it will send you past Full Moon Den into Dayspring and the settlement here, which is currently owned by a clan. Now, we'll cover the colours briefly in a little bit. But then, as you start getting up here, recommended level 15, 14, 17, 35. Can you imagine having to fight your way to your friends as a level 1, having to run through all of this where you're So say you start in Rose Landing like I did, and you and your friends have decided that you're going to start, I don't know, head to maybe Primrose, and then kind of start your questing in this region, because it's relatively central. I'd have to fight my way past, or run my way past 17s and 18s, and it would be very reminiscent of the old WoW days of having to run from Darnassus to, say, Ironforge and Stormwind, and doing the Wetlands run. But because there's no fast way to travel, you are going to have to leg it. And unfortunately, the world is both, well, this is both good and bad. The world is large enough that it feels relatively involved, but it's also very bad in that there is a lot of running around, and you can waste a lot of time just trying to get from A to B. Like, I try very, very hard to keep as much as I can centralized and do things in jaunts. So the fact that I have a quest over here, a quest up there, so I have a side quest over here in Psycore, then I need to go to Hoff Point Hunt, sorry, then or back over here, and this region is unpassable, so I'm going to have to double back and come around. Isn't great, but it'll needs must. It'll need doing. I'll just have to get on with it. But I do try to keep as much as I can in one area. Now, while we're on the subject of maps, the game has 3 factions. Now, the factions themselves, in a PvE environment, mean jack. You don't have to worry about them. you can play whatever faction you want, and it's all good. It only matters in PvP. Because you also can't... So, like, I'm part of the purple faction. I'm part of the syndicate. They're kind of the scientists, seekers of truth. You then have the yellow faction, which I believe is Covenant. I believe. And they're kind of the religious faction. Whereas, and the Marauders are essentially pirates. Strength is their mainstay. And each of these zones you can effectively take over. And by taking over them with, you can see these bars, these are the influence bars. So this is how strong your Covenant is there. And these upcoming wars enable you to fight for dominance in that region. So if I just click on First Light, you can see that my standing in this region, because each region essentially has reputations. So we go to territory standings, and it shows that I'm a stranger in all of the regions. I'm a newcomer in Wind's Ward because I briefly quested in there, but I'm respected in First Light. Now, I don't know what the maximum is, but I'm working on finding out in First Light, because I'm going to kind of stay here till I'm 25, outside of maybe the main world quest. Because I do need to try and catch the main campaign up to where I am. But, yeah. I don't necessarily know what the benefit is to having... Oh, yeah, Covenant. Invasion in progress. Control locked until 1 hour after the invasion resolves. Claimed by... and it's ruled by Covenant. So we may actually lose this zone. Neither here nor there. But yeah, you can see what's coming up on my screen is town projects. Now, going to the board, because talking about quests and bounties, the bounty system allows you to upgrade parts of the town. So, slog up the stairs. Bring up the board. Right, so you've got upgrade Warhorns to tier 2. Upgrade the Loom. Activate the Miner's Resolve. Town Upkeep. Now, Town Upkeep is fairly straightforward, and you can see that you can pick up, and if you double click them, you abandon the missions, which isn't too bad. Some of them just aren't easily to be resolved for me at the moment, because I don't know where they are, but we'll work on that as we go down the road, because I never beta tested this. So, having kind of shown that around, a couple of the gripes to wrap up on what my overall thoughts of the video are, because I realize that we're approaching the 45-minute mark already. The game is cathartic, is probably the best way to put it. You can, if you want, you can log in and decide, you know what, I am just going to sit here and I am going to mine. Like, say you find a really nice good mining node, or a good mining spot where it's got like a bit of iron, silver, and oil, in my case. Like, if I could find a place that had this 3 selection, I'd probably sit there for a good 4 or 5 hours just mining to get my skill up to the point where I can then maybe go gold, alchemy, and like alchemy stones and star metal, and kind of farm this tier maybe, before going finally to Orichalcum. Platinum and lodestones and stuff. All, like, same with mining, logging, any of the gathering professions. And then once you've built up enough, you can then go and refine them, and you can kind of just work on your profession slowly. But that Catharsis has the innate problem in that it affects your storyline. So for instance, I'm level 22, and Old Stone remembers the main storyline quest I was supposed to do at level 14. So as a result, the reward, the armor case that it's going to give me at level 13 is not going to be an upgrade in the slightest. To the point where I'm immediately going to salvage it. Because there's no vendors in this game. Or vendors in the traditional sense of you being able to go and sell your weapons and whatnot. You just salvage everything. You can put stuff on what essentially works out as the auction house to make a little bit of gold if you've got extra stuff, but I haven't really found it that useful, because you can see here that trading post, this is the auction house. So people can make gold from it, but the gold, because the lore behind this is it's a self-enclosed ecosystem with obviously a finite amount of funds, those funds get cycled around very quickly. So money's very easy to come by, but you also lose it very quickly. So I've yet to find points where it becomes too manageable. I kind of hover around the 1,000 gold mark more often than not. There is unfortunately an in-game shop, but that's to be expected. It is just all cosmetics though. So you've got consumables, which are your dyes. You've got emotes. Think like Destiny 2 emotes. Armor skins, unlocked armor skin. The purple weapon is a result of a Twitch drop, but it's just all cosmetic. So yeah, back to overall review. The catharsism of the game is nice, but can be very distracting. The other big gripe with this game is unfortunately the login queues. Now, I'm quite fortunate in that I've managed to log on while I'm doing university stuff at home, which meant that the queue wasn't particularly long. But the realm I'm on, if I try and log in on an evening, I can be looking at a 3-hour wait time to get in. And that 3-hour wait sometimes doesn't even work, because I'll get disconnected from the queue midway through, or 2/3 of the way through, or at any random point, and then it'll just put me at the back of the queue. So that's why, although I have, as I said, I have /played, I have 21 hours playtime on this character, which is the bulk of my work. My Steam time for it, if we load that up, is 35 hours. So there's a 14-hour difference between what I've been able to play and what I've been able to actually just experience, because the rest of the time has been just sat waiting in queues trying to get onto the game. So hopefully the servers improve and there becomes more option to log on and stuff, but on a whole, the game is quite a nice, soothing break from the likes of World of Warcraft, where although you still have that level, that potential level of catharsism in going and doing professions in World of Warcraft, because you don't have that period in between each mining node or thing where you're just moving to the next node in World of Warcraft, in New World, you can go to a heavily forested area and put something on your second screen. In my case, it's uni work or reviewing work and like YouTube and stuff like that. I can be doing that while simultaneously we can be logging and things like that, or I can just put some music on, vibe, and just happily mow down a forest. Careful not to become over encumbered. Once I get too high, I then fast travel back, dump everything in my vault or my storage shed, and go back out and rinse and repeat. And you can do that for any profession you like. If you want to sit and do fishing, you can do fishing. Go for it. And once you've built up enough raw materials, you can then go into the refining and the armor crafting process. And potentially, if you get a good roll on something, like say for instance, you crafted a bow that had plus 20 dex on, for example, you could then sling that up on the auction house if you're not using a bow build yourself. Because once you equip a green or any uncommon item, it obviously becomes bound to you, much like any other game. So you can kind of make some of your money back, or you can just salvage it and essentially rinse and repeat. Because once you get to a certain crafting level and you salvage, you get some of those materials back. So whereas you could initially craft, say, 20 helmets, once you've salvaged all 20 helmets, you could potentially make another 3 or 4 more helmets. And you can kind of just keep climbing your skills up until you reach that perfect point of potentially having everything maxed at 200. At which point, GG, you've kind of completed the game, and then you can just go about getting all the weapon skills to 20. So there's a lot to do in the game, but there's no order in which you must do it in. So my final parting words, all in all, good game. Does have its hiccups, but that's to be expected of the first couple of weeks. Hopefully you guys like this video, and if you do, or there's anything you want me to add to it, please comment below. And if this video does well enough, I will look to do more videos, guides, and potentially even builds for New World when I can log on. Because as a side note, I did attempt to craft a paladin in New World and then found out that the healing / hybrid playstyle wasn't really going to pan out. But who knows? If this video is popular enough, we might give it a second stab. In the meantime though, folks, I hope you've had a lovely day, and I will see you all in the next one. Take care, folks.